Oh, yeah.
Oh, I felt like you were in person, isn't that funny?
It's just like a big presence.
The line.
It
didn't occur to me that we've never met in person. I was just thinking since your friends will leave, but yeah, you're quite right, never met in person.
Yeah,
That's
Cheryl's
awesome.
always online.
I hope you're my last one. I keep saying like, okay, I think that's everybody, but wow, that's late.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
All right.
So you all
Hi up
know
there.
we are
Really?
live streaming. So just be aware, the public can hear you.
Oh, I feel really weird sitting right here.
It moves around as people talk though.
Yeah,
So
or-
it's
Oh, good, you guys talk more.
behind you.
I mean, Troyella, you're the only one, do you like it when it moves around or do you want me to make it static?
It's fine.
Fine, all right. I always find it so distracting. This is like that, it's like it zooms in on me.
Well, you didn't have to do that. It's okay. Yeah. It's just some kind of camera shy, but it's okay.
All right, y'all, so we're missing quite a few people here. Let's see.
It's too noisy.
Everybody deal well with the storm? Yeah.
How about you?
Lucky, yeah. Good power, kept internet. A lot of people were out. I know where I live.
All right, so we don't have a quorum. So I'm gonna move us along with other stuff. We always have stuff to talk about, even when we don't have a quorum. So, but I'm not going to have us do approval of the meeting minutes or anything. I'm just checking to make sure it's in the waiting room. There isn't. So maybe this meeting will be faster. Let's do a quick round of introductions as we normally do. And I'll kick us off. I think you all know me, but I'm Emily Flynn. I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm gonna pass to Kristen, and then we'll make our way around the room.
Yeah, Kristen Kessler, I'm Project Manager in the Department of Health and Wellness. Also, it's just so weird to like look at people's like faces when I say this rather than being on Zoom. She, her pronouns. My project that I manage is creating healthy schools and communities, but also support the Well Kingston coalition with Heal Well.
Susanna Callahan, Vice President for Planning and Community Engagement, mostly focusing on the Mid-Hudson region for the Institute for Family Health. It's my second term.
Captain Eric Mias, Salvation Army, for all of Ulster and Northwest Dutchess County.
Hi, I'm Katrina Williams. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Ulster County Department of Mental Health, and I use she, her, they, them pronouns.
John Rose Pullman, Chair of the Police Streets Advisory Council for the city.
Troy Ellen, you're up if you're there.
Yes, I'm here. I'm Troy Ellen Dixon. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am the chair of the Live Well Kingston Commission.
All right, thank you, everyone. Since we don't have a quorum, I'm gonna just mention that I had next on the agenda to do administrative matters, and that was to talk about Dr. Ellis Leader becoming a commissioner. We don't have, the whole point was that we need to do a vote to approve them to be a commissioner, so I'm gonna move that on for now.
Did they interview though, or no?
Yeah, so they came last month and introduced themselves. I think you were not here last month. In fact, I have the notes in front of me.
I think I was late because the clock that I.
We talked about like the bike stuff. I feel like you were.
Yeah, I was here, but I came late.
Maybe he was on the Zoom.
He was on the Zoom.
You might have missed them.
Stop looking.
I probably missed it. I must have missed
Yeah.
because I was like 15 minutes late because the clock was wrong where I was working.
Yeah. And so we went into an executive session afterwards and it felt like a very positive conversation, but that we weren't able to vote on it. So if we had a quorum here, I was gonna ask if people wanted to stay after to discuss, or we could just vote next time that we have a quorum. So for you all to think about for next month, unless more commissioners come now, that next month we'll try to vote.
In this commission, you can't make vote. You have to be together to vote. So on something like this, you can't write in.
Not technically, so open meeting law. I'm trying to remember the details of it, but we have not been able to do that in the past. I could try to remember why that was in this one. All right, so thank you for all that. So I'm gonna move right along with our agenda. So next up, I had some printouts there if anybody wants them, or I can bring it up on screen. I'm gonna do that.
So you want this here?
Sure. So. On our agenda tonight, I wanted to just mention the draft action plan, which we went over last month. So I can go right into that when I go into it. Bear with me 1 second, so I can document around. There it is. So my call to action is to remind you all that we have this draft action plan now, and it's still open for feedback if you'd like to. I'm not gonna go through it all again, but just so you know, we have this action plan now. If we had a quorum, I might ask you to vote on it, but we don't, so I'm not going to now. So basically, it's just a reminder that we have it. Susanna, I see you. Do you
I
want
can
to,
look at it here,
or do you have any questions
but
about it?
it's okay. I should have read it all before. Sorry.
It's all good.
Good. When I can just share, some of the things on there are also just work that our department's already doing, particularly through the Great Healthy Schools and Communities program, in collaboration with Live Kingston, which is weird to distinguish between the two, but we're all in the same department. We do, similar work, like the 4 newsletters. We actually already sent out twice. Sent out 2 newsletters from our department, and we have plans to send out one in May. So for Creating Healthy Schools and Communities, we are sending out quarterly newsletters, and since I was on parental leave, I'm kind of like speeding us up to like at least get 3 in our fiscal year. So just to share, like I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, like I know we are definitely already doing that. That's something, and I feel like it would be, we do a CHISC highlight and a Live Well Kingston highlight, as well as kind of a 3rd article that, Emily's written those. I feel like if the commission has thoughts on like that 3rd article, some of it's like related to work that like we're doing at our department, will be included that month, but just so you know, if you haven't received those, let me know. I'll make sure that you're on the list. We can get you updated for that. And then I think that's the biggest one that I saw on there that was already happening. And then we'll be talking about letters of support later on in the agenda today. So just some context, things are already happening in our department. I see that you're just reflecting them in the action plan.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I just added it, just.
Yes.
Sometimes just recording the things that we actually accomplish is like half the battle.
What about number 3? I remember that discussion last year.
Yeah.
Has there been any more discussion on that, or I don't remember this since that last year?
Yeah, so our colleague Marcia has come up with a project description. And the most exciting part is that we helped the YMCA Farm Project apply for a grant. We would pay for the stipend for the garden stewards. And so we would use that stipend program as a pilot. Sort of like, we've never paid people in that way before through the city. So if we can do it in this way, which feels very clear to me, it's like we're hiring people to help facilitate gardens. That feels very clear to communicate. Once we have established that pilot, we might be able to duplicate it in other focus teams or in other ways. So.
Oh, okay, so sorry. So
Yeah.
it's not for people to, I remember Troy Allen talking about this. It's not for people to attend these meetings.
No.
Oh.
It might eventually. Ultimately, I would love to be able to figure out a way to pay commissioners to participate.
Right.
That's.
Well, I'm not talking about, I'm thinking about more, community people who can't afford, the time to take off. But you're saying it's for actual stipends for people who are like volunteers in programs and agencies that do some of the work of the goals of the commission.
Let me restate, let me try to be clear. So the pilot project that Marcia has drafted out is specifically to pay garden stewards. So those would be the point people for each community garden that then might facilitate other volunteers to come to those gardens and garden. So we're not actually paying them to garden, we would be paying them to facilitate sort of the management of that garden space.
Got it.
that pilot, I'm calling that a pilot program, if we can figure out how to pay them, I feel like we can figure out how to pay other people for other projects. Eventually, we'd love to be able to pay for commissioners. That's a hard nut to crack though.
Because it's city. Yeah.
And because if one commission pays their commissioners,
Yeah.
do all the other subcommittees and commissions pay their? So that's a much bigger conversation with many other people involved. But paying garden stewards, even though it has complications, feels simpler.
Yeah. And it's from a grant.
And it's from, and that's part of the justification,
Article,
is that
yeah.
we get the funding through a grant. So I don't remember, I'm looking at you, but you're not gonna know. I don't remember when we will hear about that grant. But I believe it's early spring because it's part of it is for the growing season in 2023 with the YMCA Farm Project. And so when we find out about that, then we'll be able to go forward with that pilot project.
Right.
Yeah. So it's part of our larger goals for the commission because the commission has identified a larger goal of increasing community representation and decision-making. And part of what we identified, a way to increase that was to pay people for their time. And so that's why it's getting reported on here, because part of that conversation originated in the commission. And then we decided to do this pilot project in Grove. Questions about how it relates to the action plan? So basically, we'll just keep updating you. Cool. All right, thank you, everybody. Going back to our agenda, okay, and then this is, I'll try to make a good segue. Number 4 on the action plan is to advise the Mayor and Common Council on public health. Hey, Troy Ellen, do you think you could mute yourself? I think I'm hearing myself from you.
Oh, it's like a creepy whisper sound.
Yeah. I think that was, all right. So goal number 4 is advise the Mayor and Common Council on public health, on the social determinants of health related issues. And our objective there was to do some letters of support. And so what I'm bringing up to you now is last month we talked about an equitable food access letter that was sort of originated from Place Corps. And I can bring that up on the screen. And so we presented this last month. We talked a little bit about it. I want to welcome Marcia. I see you've joined us on Zoom. Marcia, do you want to say hi quickly?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I apologize for joining late. I was in another meeting. Marcia Sebro, Project Manager for City of Kingston Health and Wellness Department. Thank you.
Thank you. So we presented this letter of support last month. We asked for feedback. We got some great feedback from Malia and we added it in. And so now we're bringing it back to you again to see if you all would like to endorse it as a commission and have it be sent. It's not technically a letter of support. It's really more of a letter of education, really educating the Common Council about food security or the lack of food security in our community. And then, Kristen, is there more you'd like to say about it? Because you've worked a lot on this.
Yeah, I think the main updates from last time, when we had made some comments on putting in specific data and references. So in the bullet points, I went through and updated where the data came from in a variety of ways, and they included a little bit more specifics in this bullet point that she had down here. This, came about again through the collaboration with Place Corps and working through this food access project. It also really felt like, based upon previous conversations, that this was a value of the Little Kingston Commission on obviously food access, and equitable food access. So this is also not that it can be, so I was gonna say it's like an evergreen letter in the sense that like, you can send it anytime, we can bring it, there's always food access, always a good time to talk about it. It's not like we have to talk about it right now. We were previously going to align it with March as National Nutrition Month because that made a lot of sense to kind of provide a little bit of grounding and context to the Common Council as to why we're bringing something about food and nutrition to them. That being said, it doesn't have to be. I think last time I was trying to hedge it a little bit and Traylon was pushing me, like, are you like trying to like not do something? I was like, no, you know, I want to be mindful of people's time and capacity. But it's not some, there are a few other items on the agenda that I was going to talk about afterwards that are a little more timely in terms of like a deadline. But this is a great, I think, foundation for just getting the conversation started. To be like, hey, by the way, council, like, here are some statistics and some information about your Kingston community.
Any questions?
I just wanted to mention that the Salvation Army has their own publications, and in that, SA Connects is a magazine that gets distributed throughout the eastern United States and Puerto Rico. And I was interviewed about food insecurity, specifically in Kingston, so I talked a little bit about the things that we do locally as the Salvation Army, and what we do as Kingston in order to help that. So that will be in a national publication, which is sitting on my desk right now. So, you know, bringing national attention to a local problem and vice versa, so.
That's awesome. Can you share a link to that article?
Yeah, sure, it's saconnects.com or org, I always forget which.
Yeah.
And it's this month's article is about that, page 14.
That's awesome. I'll include it in the like meeting, like reminder or like.
Yeah.
For next time. That's awesome.
Traylon, that's your.
Yeah, Traylon, go ahead.
That I'm just following up. I remember somewhere in an email between the last meeting and this that it had been suggested that perhaps the letter should not come from the Live Well Kingston Commission, since it was actually done by the other group, Place Corps, and that it should come from Place Corps with some sort of endorsement or not recommendation, but an endorsement by the Live Well Kingston Commission. Does anybody else remember that?
Yeah, we do remember that. That's a question we have for the commission. Would you, thank you for asking that, Traylon. How would you like us to structure this?
I mean, I'm just putting it out there for our consideration, you know, as the full commission, even though we're not all here and I'm not there at all, that we consider whether that is the best way to do it. I'm agnostic about how we proceed. I just remember that it was brought up, but I don't know if it was discussed and then resolved.
My 2 bits, Traylon, since this is not asking for anything but informing, I think it's fine as is. You know, we're not asking for anything, right? It's just informing that, yeah. I think it's fine that it comes from well. Kristen, you did most of the work on this, right?
I wrote it, but it was in collaboration with the youth. We did this project with the idea of, we've had a lot of conversations about food access in Kingston and wanting to take some of this data and really summarize it for Kingston versus like Ulster County versus New York State. So as a member of the Department of Health and Wellness, I did write.
Yeah, I feel comfortable setting it, absolutely.
Okay. Do you have any further thoughts about that, Traylon? Are you comfortable sending it as the chair?
Absolutely. I was comfortable initially with setting it as the chair. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we had a conversation about it because I think it was brought up in an email.
Yeah, I agree. All right, thank you. We already have in place a process for like letters of support for your information. I think I've said it, I'm gonna say it again, just in case. The commission in the past has voted to allow that if a letter of support is requested of Live Well Kingston, it really is just either someone brings it to either me or Troy Ellen, and between the two of us, we both agree that that's within the values of Live Well, that we then can endorse a letter of support. Often we'll get requests for letters of support and need like a week around turnaround for grants and so forth. So even though this is not exactly a letter of support, I guess I'm mentioning that process because I guess I'm justifying, I don't think we need to vote on it, but we wanted to make sure that you were all okay with it. And I'm seeing verbal nods, so thank you for that. So I think that we can go forward even though we don't have a quorum. as long as you all are all right with that.
Works.
All right, so thank you all. I feel like that's sort of resolved. I think that we will, send that letter on behalf of Live Well Kingston, and that'll be great. And then I wanted to just pause for a moment, and I see that Dr. Lader has joined us. Dr. Lader, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Lader. Sorry I was a little bit late. The hospital's crazy today, but I'm a cardiologist over at Health Alliance, part of the Westchester Heart and Vascular Institute. So I'm glad to be part of this committee, this commission.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lader. I also got some folders that were dropped off. Since I have you introducing yourself, did you want to talk to them quickly?
Yes, I think the, when you mentioned, I mean, kind of what our mission is, Westchester Health is kind of rolling out it's a funny acronym. It's called CHIPDIP, but it stands for Cardiovascular Health Promotion and Disease Prevention Program. And it's aimed at helping patients or helping individuals, not patients, who have risk factors for vascular disease. And we're looking at, diet, nutrition, exercise, high blood pressure, diabetes, and who basically are now healthy, but hooking them up with a prevention program that's tailored to their needs. This actually hasn't officially been rolled out to our community. It's supposed to happen, I think this month, but it's been in play started in the Westchester area. So that's like Valhalla, White Plains. It then made its way to Poughkeepsie, our MHRH Mid-Hudson Regional group, and we're next. And so basically in a nutshell, patients who are, or individuals who are felt to be, at risk, either because of family history or because of personal history of heart disease, they can basically be contacting our office, and we'll see them as providers, and then depending upon their issues, connect them to the services they need. And I think I said before, the one area that we're really short on in this community right now, but this now gives us access to, is nutritional counseling. So we'll be able to do nutritional counseling remotely, with providers in I think they're in Westchester, but we'll be able to set up basic conference calls and get nutritional counseling. So we'll be addressing things like blood pressure, diabetes, nutrition, exercise, and everything we need to keep people out of the hospital and out of trouble. And that's basically what this CHIPDIP is. Again, it's a very funny acronym, and it sounds like it involves salsa and hummus and stuff, but actually it's a health promotion program.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for having these dropped off for us to share. I've got a bunch more. I'll keep them.
Okay, no, you're welcome. And if you have questions, you met Amy, our office manager.
I didn't personally, no.
Yeah, well, she brought them over. So numbers are, how to reach me. And so if anybody is interested, wants more information, or wants a referral, you can contact me. And we see everybody. So it doesn't matter insurance or not or anything. We see, if you have an issue, we'll see you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Lader. And to update you, we don't have a quorum here tonight, so we're not able to vote on your official commission, membership, but we'll do that next month.
Well, I'm here in spirit then, and
exactly. And our commission, we always have good stuff that we need to discuss, even when we don't have a quorum. So we appreciate you coming. Anyway,
as I was thinking about the nutrition thing you were talking about, is there anywhere in Kingston a community garden?
Yeah. So thank you for asking. I'm going to share my screen to show you the answer. Am I going to be able to do it fast enough? So Live Well Kingston, this commission, we have our different focus teams. I'm going to pull up the Live Well Kingston website. So one of our focus teams is Grow Well, and Grow Well tries to bring together all of the community gardens. And if you go to Live Well Kingston /Grow Well, we have a map right here of all of the community gardens in the city of Kingston.
Awesome. Ooh, so there are a lot of pins. Oh, that's great. That's great. Because I wasn't aware we had any, but and that's I guess why we have these meetings.
Yeah, and that's good to know because that's part of our role is to try to get the word out about them. But to clarify, there's sort of different categories of gardens. So we have some gardens that give away food, we have pollinator gardens, we have a old school garden, and a couple of perennial edible gardens. So it does look like a lot, but it's mostly, but they're different categories.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So thank you for asking. That's part of our work is to try to promote the community gardens.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Lader. We'll move on then. So Kristen gave a little teaser about some other potential letters of support that are more timely. Do you want to present these?
Sure. Yeah. So in thinking through, it was there was goal 4, I believe. Oh no. That website is, I had to request access to it.
And I was able to access it on my desk computer, but I probably have it, maybe it's this computer has it.
Well, I can talk through them.
Do you want to share your screen?
I'm not in the Zoom, but as I'm talking, I will join the Zoom and then I can share my screen. So I was just thinking through, we've had conversations, both I believe in this commission meeting and then in our focus group meetings, this idea of including some more PSC work and the work that we do, so policy, systems, and environmental change. Let me make sure that I'm on mute, so. Okay. Perfect, so you don't hear me doubly. There we go. Oh, there's me. That's a wonderful angle for my face right now. We're gonna take that video away. There's me on a bike in Vermont instead. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
I think that you do.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So, was thinking through some of these policies. So what could I bring to the commission, also bring to our focus groups for those who are interested in supporting different policies. And right now is a particularly pressing time for supporting policy in the state of New York because it is when they are working on the budget for 2024. So it seems like people are familiar with that. It's February through April that legislators are talking about the budget. The governor has already put out her proposed budget, so there's conversation. So if we want something to be in the budget for 2024, now is the time to talk about it. And so there are 2 that I thought might be relevant to bring to the commission. One is about hunger relief programs. So this came about when someone on a call recently asked, oh, did you hear that they were reducing funding for HIPNAP? And HIPNAP is the Hunger Prevention and Nutrition Assistance Program. So this is the program that both large food pantries and food banks receive from the state. It's money that they use to purchase foods. And so from my experience working at a food bank, we had the HIPNAP grant. We used that money to purchase foods at a wholesale cost, so it was really cheap. And then we put that in our inventory for our food pantries who were members of our network to be able to purchase food. Our pantries could apply to receive this HIPNAP funding for us, so then they had a line of credit. So what this did was give them money to buy food at a greatly discounted rate versus what they would be buying from, a produce market or just from a food distributor or anything like that. So HIPNAP provides a lot of funding. It also provides funding for nutrition education. It provides funding for capacity building. So through our HIPNAP funds, we were able to purchase cold storage for food pantries. We were also able to run a seed grant program where we gave money to organizations that were doing cool and innovative things in food security. So HIPNAP is a big program across the state. From my understanding with the governor's budget this year is that she has not necessarily reduced HIPNAP funding, she's put it back to pre-2020 levels. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit and a lot of people were facing increased rates of food insecurity, they bumped up funding for HIPNAP. And so with the budget for 2024, she's reduced it back to what it was essentially in 2019. And that is of concern to a lot of food pantries and to a lot of food banks because they're not seeing decrease numbers in people attending the food pantry. I'm looking at you right now.
31 more people last month, brand new signed up.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember, I went and talked to Tyrone recently, yeah. So it seems like it's not like the need has gone down,
Yeah, costs have
but
only risen. I mean, there's lots of reason to think that we're not pre-pandemic levels of need.
mhm, exactly, so that is something that's a concern, and so I found this, instead of us necessarily having to write a new letter to the governor's office or to, Senator Hinchy's office to be like, advocate for this, I found this petition that is from Feeding New York State, which is the New York State affiliate of Feeding America, which is kind of the umbrella organization for a lot of food banks and food pantries across the country. A petition where we would be able to sign on to it with, all of the other affiliates who are signing this petition to send to the governor's office to both advocate for full funding for HIPNAP, but also to other programs, Nourish New York and the NOAA program, which there's some paragraphs on there about that. So I wanted to share that with the commission, as if the commission, felt like, so I was bringing this because it felt like it aligned with the values of the commission. I am not a voting member of the commission, but I just wanted to share it as an opportunity for folks to be able to sign something like this.
So, thank you for educating us on this too. So this is more advocacy, right? Yeah. And so are you thinking that we would sign it as a commission or send it out to commission members to sign it as individuals?
I guess.
I would suggest sending it out to commissioners because this is, it's an individual. There is no ability to sign it as a commission. And I don't think that we have the capability to sign it. We don't have the mechanism to be able to sign it as a commission without having a quorum and a vote and a discussion, et cetera. But I think that this is time sensitive. So I would suggest that we send it out to all commission members and encourage them to sign it.
And that brings me to actually thinking, I'd never thought about bringing advocacy issues to this group, honestly, but it's a great idea. Like I just came from Washington doing a lot of advocacy nationally for community health center issues, and in the state we had that week happening 2 weeks ago. So it's not really just about individual health centers, but about big programs like the impact on Medicaid, impact on the 340B pharmacy program, which is a program that really helps to fund very low cost pharmacies for people who are underinsured or uninsured. But I don't know if that's the kind of thing that we want to do here. And if that's, that's a whole other realm, but it's an interesting way, way of educating us and potentially others on issues that are aligned with the coalition. Like, imagine there might be mental health issues too that you guys want advocacy around. I don't know what the Department of Health does around that, but imagine that there are health related issues too. And anyway, so I just.
One point of clarification, as city staff, sometimes we are not allowed to advocate for specific legislation, but we can always educate. So, but I've never seen any restrictions on the commission.
Yeah.
You as a commission can advocate for specific legislation if you like. And in fact, one of your roles is to employ legislators.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to clarify that yes, there are specific things that we are not able to.
So we could not sign this as a commission.
But
yeah.
Go ahead, Troy. Yeah.
But I don't think we have a mechanism to sign it as a commission. I also don't think that there is any restriction to us signing things as a commission. But I think that we can certainly send out to individual commissioners.
Yeah.
And encouraging them to sign it and to share it with friends and family in their network to sign it.
I agree. Yeah, I feel like I was looking at this and it's a little difficult because it says first name, last name. I was like, Lidwell, Kingston. Yes, thank you. I also was just thinking how I was like talking about HIPNAP. Also, as my role being funded by a state program, I cannot lobby for specific bills. I think that I'm more than happy to share information about them, but I'm just putting that out there because we are live streamed right now. That is something that I'm aware of. If as we go forward, there are more things like this, like that's really interesting, and you say like, oh, we love this, I'll sign this individually. We feel like the commission, we want to write letters for this. If it sounds like that is within the realm of like the possibilities for the commission, I'm always happy to reach out to like Feeding America and say, or Feeding New York State and say, hey, we are a community coalition, we're really interested in this, like we want to write a letter. Is there another pathway to do that besides this individual petition? It is timely, so it's probably helpful to just sign the petition that's already created, as Fran mentioned, but I'm always happy to do that as well. I also, this would give me an excuse, I know the director of the No Kid Hungry in New York, and I've been wanting to reach out to her to be like, hey, we're here, and I'm sure she would be really open to sharing information with us.
I mean, I certainly think that being able to sign on as a commission would be more impact. I noticed that if I sign on to something, if I see organizations, that really catches my eye and it like really builds on the momentum of the petition, I think. So I don't know if it's something that we'd have to vote on, in which case we can't do that today, but I definitely think it would be great if we could sign it as a commission.
So I propose
And
as a
it-
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Troy.
And in the meantime, though, having all of the commissioners, I think we have 9 active commissioners, and there's Ellis later, who's not yet a commissioner, but I don't know whether you would be able to sign on to this. I would encourage people as individuals to sign on, because, and that doesn't preclude also doing some sort of a letter from the commission, but it's about the order of magnitude. They get 9 petitions that they receive times however many. If we each give it, to 3 different people, that's 9 times 3, and so on and so on.
Thank you. Yeah, so process, it sounds like we're gonna send out one of our after email, we'll ask everyone to sign, we'll send you the link and ask you to sign on to it or pass it on if you'd like to. Maybe Kristen, if you don't mind looking to see if there's a way for the commission to formally sign on, that'd be great. Any last questions about that? Because Kristen, but wait, there's more. Kristen has more to talk about.
There's more. I always have so much to talk about. There is one more. I was thinking of all of the things. I was like, what can I bring? That's timely for the New York State budget. There's also the one for healthy school meals for all New York kids. And so last year, New York students lost access to free school meals. So this was previously something they were doing during the pandemic as well. I say during the pandemic, COVID-19 has not gone away, but we are now moving in a direction where we are not having policies that are reflective of that situation anymore. And so through Feeding New York as well, there is a similar petition that is to have free school meals for all New York students be included in the budget for 2024. So that is this petition as well. This one, we can do the same thing, send out the link, have individuals sign it. This one in particular, I feel like I can reach out to the person that I know who works for No Kid Hungry in New York State and see if there's something else that as a commission you could do, if, I should say, like, you would like to advocate for free school meals. That's just the other petition.
I see head nods.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And then
One more. I'm not done, y'all. This one's a little bit different.
Yeah. Just the more complicated one.
Yes, this one is a little bit more complex, a little bit more local. So right now, the city of Kingston is updating its zoning codes. Have people seen anything about this? Are you familiar, totally unfamiliar? Heard a little rambling? Okay, I'm not an expert in this, but I have become fascinated by zoning codes. And we are moving from a zoning code that was last updated in the 1960s. That was a Euclidean zoning code that essentially separated cities based upon the function of the buildings rather than like the form, like the outside of it. So that essentially means that it creates like residential areas, commercial areas. much more complex than that. Our director of housing would probably cry if he heard me explain it that way. Maybe he would just be excited that I brought it up.
Yeah, you used to be clean.
I know, I know. I hope that's how you pronounce it. And so we are moving towards form-based zoning, which essentially it allows for mixed use development of buildings. So it's not this idea that like residential has to be in one area, commercial in the other area. It's really kind of like what like the building looks like on the outside versus like what's happening on the inside. I suppose is kind of how you can describe it. So that's a lot. I would encourage you to go on to Engage Kingston, and I believe it's Kingston Forward is the project where you can look at it. And oh yeah, I think I've got the share screen but you can look on there so you can learn all about zoning codes. The time for public input has already passed. This is timely because the Common Council will be voting on the zoning codes by late spring is the time that I've heard. And there are 2 provisions in the new zoning code that felt relevant to bring to the commission if we would like to write a letter of support to encourage the Common Council to keep these included. One is the ability to have a corner stores. So right now, I kind of set us up with the idea that you have like residential zones and you have commercial zones. So you cannot have commercial businesses in certain areas of Kingston because they are zoned as residential only. With the new zoning codes, there is a specific way that you can have corner stores. So we just talked about food access, and there's a lot in that letter that for food access in Kingston talks about how a lot of residents live really far from food retail locations. So in this letter, it is long. There's some language in here since we are going to move forward with the other letter. I can rewrite if it is interesting to folks about the idea that there are 50 food retail stores in Kingston, but they are not all the same type because a pharmacy is also considered a food retail store. And it doesn't really provide the same items as a full service grocery store like a supermarket. So there really isn't the same type of food access in Kingston depending upon where you live. There's also data from the USDA's Department of Economic Research Service, which demonstrates that much of Midtown and basically everything to the water from there is located in what is called a low income, low food access area. You may have seen that written sometimes as a food desert, but I did not write it that way specifically because I'm hoping that everyone's moving away from the term food desert. That's another conversation.
To what now?
To food apartheid. And the idea is that the idea is that food.
I know what it is.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't know if food deserts are the same thing or just a different, like.
So yeah, it's just the same thing, the idea of food desert. So desert is naturally occurring. Whereas, so that's one, that deserts are naturally occurring and that they're devoid of resources. And so when we describe neighborhoods as food deserts are not naturally occurring. They occur because of policy, they occur because of
structural, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this idea of moving from food deserts to food apartheid really puts an emphasis on that this is something that is solvable. Like we can change this with policy and this is something that has a cause. Also that these areas have, these communities and neighborhoods are not devoid of resources. They have like moving from, towards like an asset-based approach.
Socio-political decisions, I say the same thing.
That's really
social determinants of health are not social. Not socially determined.
Yeah.
They're like politically and structurally determined. Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
I get it, yeah. Huh?
I never thought about that.
Every time I say it, I kind of like inside, I kind of cringe.
Right.
I think it's like,
I know.
it's like, it shouldn't be called,
Yeah.
And it's such a lingo now, just to say,
Yeah,
okay,
I know.
social
Yeah,
determinants of
yeah,
health, blah, 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 blah.
Like, I think it's like out there, those kind of differences, rather than, call it what it is, like
Yeah.
food apartheid. or-
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't write food desert in this letter because I felt like, that was not the appropriate term, but the way that the USDA categorizes it, it's low income, low food access area. And that means that a significant number of residents are more than 1 mile from a supermarket. They also in this link have data that shows how the majority of our community members who live in these communities, there's also a relatively high number of them who don't have access to a vehicle. So this idea that full-service food retail locations are not equitably distributed across Kingston. And in particular, they're not equitably distributed in communities that are experiencing higher rates of food insecurity and have higher barriers to cars and transportation, and so forth. So including the ability to have corner stores in more areas, in theory, would help to improve food access. And that's not gonna say that it's going to like tomorrow, but if the policy is not there to allow it, then we have nowhere to start. So that's why I feel a little passionate about this idea and wanted to bring it to the commission. So you have something, the other one was just a reduction of parking minimums. I just wanted to mention that because there were 2 items in the zoning code and I just hadn't written a section for that.
Say again, reduction of what?
In parking minimums, I can do more, so, currently in the zoning code, if you build a new development, you have to have a certain number of parking spaces. That creates these big parking lots. They can't be developed into more housing or into other buildings. It also decreases walkability. So when you build to the edge of the street and you make parking underneath or you push it in the back, it creates more walkable streetscapes. So in the new zoning code, they're proposing less parking minimums, meaning less required parking, then that means that more development can happen. And then my feeling is that then people will walk and bike more.
And is that for new construction only?
Right, so the zoning code is often affects new construction and then sometimes redevelopment. The new zoning code also has guidelines for streetscapes, but it is not dictating it, doesn't tell what it has to be. But same thing, it is a guideline for new streets, which there'll be very few of in the city of Kingston, it's pretty much all developed now. But it will also guide reconstruction a little bit, like redevelopment.
Not to get into the weeds with this, but
Yeah.
because I don't really know about the zoning details of Kingston, but rather than using so much, surface space for parking, why don't they build up a little bit?
So that's part of the.
It too?
Yeah, so that's part, and let me see if I'm gonna get this right. So my understanding is that they may even allow waivers so that you don't need as many parking spaces if you build more stories up. So there's things like that in the new zoning code to encourage more density. Yeah. I highly recommend, if you have time to go deeper into it, to go to Kingston Forward and read more about it. But really our ask of you tonight is to consider if you want to do a letter of support for it. Yeah.
The thing about, can I go back to this corner store thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I feel like there's a, the other letter, or the way, whatever you want to call that letter, was about the fact that there are not enough true full-service grocery stores. And a lot of these sort of so-called like retail stores that are, and I hate, a lot of corner stores are not full service and often don't offer truly like healthy options for people and at greater cost. So that's the one thing I wonder about with this. Not to say that people shouldn't do it, but, is it sort of a Band-Aid remedy to, to what really needs to happen, maybe, is to try to get a full service grocery store in the communities in Kingston that really need them, not just corner stores. So, yeah, I haven't looked at this really carefully, but that's the one thing I wonder about,
No, totally. I think that it was interesting in bringing up the specific like zoning codes. It was a little bit of like this overlap with the other letter and so forth. Maybe it's something to reflect upon for this language and the letter of education about the food system, in talking like with the Place Corps youth. I was asking them, I was like, what would you see as a solution for food access in Kingston? Like talking about this, knowing that like there is probably limitations to building full service, to building supermarkets, I would say, because supermarkets are really large footprint. But knowing that in other cities, they have a healthy corner store initiative. So they do have programs that help to support local stores, stock affordable, wholesome staples food. Like I'm actually thinking about, it's really interesting in Minneapolis, which is very different than Kingston. They have something called a staples food ordinance, where they require food retail locations of a certain size to have a certain number of each like staples item, so that whenever they even have like these smaller corner stores, they have a certain variety of fresh produce, a certain variety of like protein type items, a certain variety of like grains and so forth. So the idea is that even when the stores are a little bit smaller, it still provides enough food for people to make wholesome meals at home rather than just having snacks, which snacks are not bad. The dietitian, I'm like, all foods fit and a diet, but we want to make sure there's enough offerings for folks. I think that Troy Ellen also had her hand raised.
Yes, I do. The point that I wanted to make is twofold. The first part is, I think the notion of corner stores here is more like, because I'm old, I'm in my late 60s, is more like the corner stores, neighborhood stores that used to exist when I was younger. So before the, Stop and Shops and the finest of the world became a thing. And so there is, as Kristen was saying, the notion that we can still, it's not just beefaroni on the shelf. You can still have fresh produce. You can still have, a meat case. The African Root Center, which is in Pankaki, is in Lou's Market, which was a corner store on Gill Street. And further up, right off of Bruin, there was an old corner store there. So that's what they're talking about. The second point that I want to make about corner stores, as opposed to a Hannaford's, is the fact that this allows for people to open businesses, people who live in the neighborhood to open a business that will not only provide food for people in the community, but will help provide for whoever's open the business for their family. So I think that there's 2 points to this that need to be considered. And I'm not suggesting the second point needs to go into the letter. I'm just saying that I think is the distinguishing characteristic here.
Good points.
Yeah, thank you, Troy Ellen. You put it very eloquently and beautifully for us. I also wanted to share, so this is what, I stopped sharing my screen so you couldn't see the mess of my inbox to find this, but our housing director actually shared this with me. It's all of the mom and pop stores that used to be in Kingston, which is super cool. Yeah, I mean, it's a little sad because they're gone, but it's all of these stores that were these corner stores that provided staples for people closer to home. And it has, where they were located and when they closed. And so like Kingston used to have this. We're not even proposing anything.
There's like Latino stores on Broadway.
And a lot of those have great fresh produce.
Right, I know, I'm just rethinking this, and where I live across the river, there's like a bodega that so many people go to. Actually, the owners are from Kingston, and it's a great little store that has some fresh, I mean, not so much vegetables, but like onions and stuff, but a lot of fruit and just a whole array of like Central American and Mexican food that you could just shop there. Yeah.
And Troy Ellen is putting in the comments that there used to be 2 in Pankaki, and if you think about the way Kingston is laid out, Pankaki is maybe a food apartheid area. It's harder and it's furthest from the grocery store. Troy, did you want to chime in on that or?
And there's limited transportation from that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And people, if they're going to shop, they can't come back on the bus with groceries for a family of 4 or 6. It's just, it's unreasonable to think they can do that. And not too long ago, they were just able to walk up the street, down the hill, wherever, and be able to shop, which meant that they didn't have to go shopping every Saturday. They could go shopping for fresh produce every couple of days. They could buy meat for the next 2 nights for dinner, poultry, whatever. I think that this is a time that is long overdue for return.
Just your hair, did you say something?
Yeah, I was thinking back to, I'm older than you, by the way, to the time when a lot of these little stores in Kingston, and I knew some of the owners, and I know owners of small stores now, and one of the problems they had was buying. And I'm wondering if they're through to create some kind of a buying co-op, that you know, maybe the city could help support something like that so that these stores could buy competitively. Because I know a guy now that has a small store, and he goes to Sam's Club and buys things to then resell. So he's paying almost retail and has to jack it up. And, you know, if there's some way to provide a buying opportunity where they're competitive.
I heard that is everyone familiar with the food co-op project that's trying to go in on Broadway by the Big Bubble laundromat? I think that I've heard them say that they, as part of their mission, would like to try to be a cooperative purchaser as well. So maybe that's sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They might be able to do something.
Yeah, maybe that could be piggybacked.
I'm watching the time go by here. It's about 5:15. So this letter is a little bit timely. I'd like to ask about process. Would you all like to review the letter? We can email it out to you. Any thoughts about process and next steps for this, or how you feel about it?
I think sending it out to all the commissioners and having us review it, much like we did the other letter, the Place Corps letter, and get the feedback that way in advance of the next meeting. That I think that would work. It's worked in the past.
Yeah.
Let me actually though reach out. I'll reach out to Bartek, our director of housing, because he told me they were voting on it in late spring. I don't know what late spring means, and I don't want it to be that they're gonna vote on it before the next commission meeting. I'm hoping late spring means like the April/May. So that would give everyone time so we can get back to another meeting, but I just want to confirm that with him. He did say the public input period is over, but he said as, a commission that we could submit really a letter to the common council anytime, but I'll confirm it. So I'll reach out just to make sure that we have time for the next commission meeting.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna move us along in the agenda.
How about?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristen. See my baby.
How you doing?
Oh, good. He's so feisty and has a strong voice and strong hands and strong personality. I like his.
That's perfect.
That's perfect.
Right.
This is so pretty. I know, we missed this festival.
Did I? Well, so there. Okay. So.
Thank you so much. It was
Yeah,
it was
that's
a
right.
good conversation.
Yeah, sorry.
It was good.
Sorry, I'm going on too.
No. I'll look at it.
Okay, good, okay.
All right, let's see, here's there. Yeah, thank you, Kristen.
Yay. Yes, the 27th. Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to bring up the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. Suzanne, you've probably heard me talk about this for a long time. When I put this on the agenda, I was going to have had the public meeting on Monday, but that got snowed out. So I wanted the commission to at least be aware of this project because it is one that is coming out of my office, the Department of Health and Wellness. And our public meeting will be next Tuesday in conference room 1 at 6 p.m. And I wanted to just quickly let you know what's in it. So as sort of representatives of the commission, if someone were to ask you about it, you could at least refer them to me and then I can get their feedback. So I'll try to be quick about it, but we'll see where this takes us. So the pedestrian and bicycle master plan is a planning document for the city. And it really is looking at the ways that we can improve walkability and bikeability in the city of Kingston. It's a full planning document, and I'm not sure how I want to go about showing it to you.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to- what are we, as a commission, expected to vote on it, to get feedback, to do what?
Nope,
Just to give,
nope. So you don't, there's no action except to be educated.
okay,
And again, the reason I want you to be educated about it is because it is a project that's been so deeply rooted in my department. And it's I've talked about it many times here in this commission, and it's also to, we have our different focus teams. One of them is travel well, and that really looks at our streetscapes. My Zoom is acting up tonight. It's not sharing very well here. So forgive me while I'm getting distracted about it. I might not be able to share my screen. Okay, so I've talked about the pedestrian bicycle many times. Okay, travel well is one of our focus teams. The focus team travel well doesn't meet very often. It's a few people, and it's often, travel well has in the past been seen as bringing 3 different organizations together. The Complete Streets Advisory Council, which is another commission for the city. The Kingston Green Line Committee, that's the committee that made a lot of the trails that have been developed in the city. And then third was Bike Friendly Kingston, which was a bicycle advocacy group. Because it was brought together in that way, it's not as much of a public facing focus team as, say, Eat Well. Eat Well brings together all of the food organizations in the community, and we do presentations. So a lot of the work that I've done for this master plan has been the travel well work, and I sort of fit it inside that bucket. And so I'm coming to you tonight to tell you about the master plan as sort of a travel well report, and also because I just really want you to be aware of it. So now to go into it deeper, let me see if I'm going to be able to open up the document. I might not be able to tonight. So instead, I'm gonna share with you the Engage Kingston page. So probably the most important thing for you all to know is that on the engagekingston.com page, this is the page of all about this project. And on it is a link to the document. So in the timeline of this project, we hired a consultant, and we did a large, robust public outreach. We heard from people, their concerns and thoughts about walking and biking. The consultant took all that information. They created an inventory, sort of a status of where our city is at right now. And then they took all that information and processed it and gave us recommendations of how to improve it. And that's why you'll see on the right-hand side so many different versions. So the first link is the full plan. It's a huge document. The second link is these beautiful maps that they've created us. They created us a map of all of we documented the ADA accessibility for all the sidewalks in the city of Kingston. We documented where all the bluestone is on the different sidewalks. There's maps about where, what else is in there? So there's these beautiful maps about all of the data that we have collected. Oh, there's a map about the Ulster County bus routes. There's municipal parking lots. There's all different ways to look at the infrastructure in the city of Kingston. Then we have inventory analysis. We have a toolkit that will be really good for city staff to use when we want to compare. Here, I can put up some of it. So let's see if I can share it here. So for example, here is the toolkit, and what the consultant has come up with is, as you may know, there's lots of different options for a streetscape. You could put in a bike lane, you could put in a buffered bike lane, you could put in cycle tracks or sharrows or signage. And what they've done is the different stakeholders all have different feelings about it. And it's a way to evaluate what is the best use for each streetscape. So they came up with some tools for us that when, let's say, a road, it's time to redesign a road, they can pull out this toolkit off the shelf and sort of start to evaluate all of the different options and what's the best one for that streetscape. I think I'm going through it pretty quickly and I'm jumping around a little bit because
What is the end?
the end,
Only
no impact, like it's sort of, it doesn't, so the first one,
It's like
bike
not
boulevards.
applicable, not plus or
No,
minus. but
right,
just
it just doesn't really apply. What I think is really interesting of the different considerations was we took into consideration the Department of Public Works' feelings about it. They're the stakeholders that we really have to get on board to do a lot of these things. So we made it a real push to get their feedback on it. But I'm gonna jump to the most exciting part, which is sort of the recommendations. And there's a lot here, I'm not gonna go through all of it, but I will show you some of these maps. So these are priority intersections that they identified to look further into. And they came up with some, I think, pretty specific recommendations for each one. And I do absolutely need to give the caveat that each one of these would need its own planning study. This is basically like a plan that tells us additional work that needs to be done. So there's a lot here, and if you hear of someone else who's interested in these topics of walking and biking, let them know that there's this whole document with lots of new suggestions and resources for our city. It's in my department because we really want to encourage people to walk and bike more because they're healthier. It also reduces traffic congestion, it reduces emissions, there's lots of value to it. And so at our public meeting on Tuesday, the consultant will talk a little bit more about these. But I'm really excited because I think that a lot of there's some programmatic recommendations. So there's recommendations for how do you design the streetscape to be safer. And then they also have in here recommendations so Tom Polk at the Y does some great bicycle education. And they have recognized that. And then they have other programmatic recommendations. Let me see if I can get to it. I'm not going to get to it quickly enough. Some of those recommendations that they have will help me with my action plans in the coming years. So I'm very excited. I don't know if you all are familiar, but we did the Be a Road Hero education campaign, and I was the project manager for that. And so, for example, they gave us some recommendations about how to continue that education and what kind of other national organizations to get guidance from, for example. So I'm very excited about how this document will direct some of my future work.
Nice, that's great.
That's an amazing amount of work. That's really impressive.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn, yes. Oh, and I see a clapping icon from Toya. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, so any questions about all that? I know I sort of jumped around a little bit. I hope the goal of it is clear. Any questions there? They talk about how to fund our projects, which is very key, it's a very important aspect to it. And like any other planning document, it's something that we will use for future grant applications. I also hope to continue collecting all the feedback from the community and just keep adding to this document so that hopefully it doesn't just sit on this shelf. Hopefully we continue to keep updating it and collecting information for it. But that's basically what I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. That there is this document, and that if anyone is interested about walkability, about the sidewalk improvements, that this document really help us guide future work around that in the city.
That's good.
That's great. I didn't read it yet, but do you know that paper, The River? You heard that?
Yes,
There was did you see that article?
I did.
I didn't read it. I
Yeah.
was thinking about it. Why do so many people, it was called like, why do so many people
Yeah.
die in Kingston? Bikes, yeah.
And
I was
I
remembering it. I wanted to read this. So yeah, I would, yeah.
specifically, and I was interviewed for that article.
you were?
And I
Okay.
think there's
I
a
have to
quote
read
from
it.
me at the bottom, and
Yeah.
I actually think it was a pretty fair article. We've had some John is the chair of the Complete Streets Council, and we've had some new people come on and, sometimes it's so easy to be like, well, why can't we just make this safer? And it's so incredibly complicated.
Very complicated, yeah.
And the deeper you go into it, the more you realize how complicated it is. And that article, I think, did a good job of explaining some of the complications around
Oh, so
transportation.
I have to read it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can talk more about that, but it's just like Kingston's a microcosm, right? Like, we're just not a bike culture as a country, right? I don't know if they talked about that.
Well, mostly they talked about, so the recent deaths that we've seen, so we've had
Right.
3 or 4 cyclist deaths since COVID, and we've had 1 pedestrian death, which is huge for the
Right.
city of Kingston, that's astronomical. But actually, it's on trend for the nation. The nation on the whole, since COVID, deaths have increased, even though some transportation has decreased. And one theory is speed, that people are speeding up on the roads. There's so much there, and I really, we talk about this every time at Complete Streets. There's another facet that we sort of dive into about it.
Yeah, there's a very active email discussion that I'm involved in a lot of them at the county level, the city level. And with, the new folks that Emily mentioned, I've tried to mentor them, get them to understand the complexities where we were 10, 12, 15 years ago, where we are today. And even this plan, that's got to be a living document, as, the whole notion of complete streets over the past 15 years has changed. I mean, things have been tried, they either worked well or they didn't. Things have gone out of fashion because it was determined that they didn't really help. And, this document has got to be changed to reflect these, this new information, this body of knowledge that's being created. It's very complicated. And there's competing agendas. Definitely, there's competing agendas, even within the advocacy groups. So,
Troy Ellen, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just had a question in terms of how does this or does it not, or will it not be impacted by the form-based code?
Great question. So both projects were developed at the same time, sort of. Unfortunately, it would be nice to sort of have one inform the next. But myself and Bartek, the project manager for the form-based code, were in collaboration, and the 2 consultants did talk. So in some ways, they're similar. They're both guidance. Each streetscape has to be studied individually. And actually, our city engineer is a traffic engineer. He's actually very knowledgeable and has a lot of qualifications. When, for example, right now, thank you, Marcia, thanks for coming. Foxhall is in mid-project. They're looking at trying to redevelop Foxhall. There's already been a public outreach, that phase is closed, and now it's like pre-construction plans. I bring that up to say, when a project is identified, it has to be considered specifically. So even though we have guidance here, and we're gonna have guidance in zoning, each project is so unique that it has to be designed specifically for it. Does that answer your question, Troy Ellen? I'm trying. Can you try again?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Cool.
I think you need Flatbush.
Flatbush and Foxhall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
both street.
Flatbush is a big deal because of the housing facility there.
Yes.
And right now they've got no sidewalk. We got to cross the tracks. There's a lot of dangerous situations there that need to be addressed. And that's been going on for
Yeah.
2-3 years since we started talking about that.
And that's part of the complication of transportation engineering is that my understanding of that project, I could get this wrong, is that they're trying to acquire right of way
Yeah.
So part of it, so when you redo a street, if you want to expand the sidewalks, sometimes, so each property owner is responsible for that sidewalk, but there's little pieces sometimes that the city has to try to buy. That becomes a legal process, unbelievably complicated. So I believe that they're sort of stuck in right of way acquisition part of that project.
Yeah, Broadway project was like that too. I think the easement part took over a year just to get that ironed out. In some cases, they were talking about a strip of land that was 12 inches wide, it's
Right.
little tiny pieces that they had to.
Yeah, it's so complicated. You know, as these cities built up, people thought they owned more than they did, it just sort of, it gets so really complicated. All right, so thank you so much for hearing about that plan. Again, public meetings Tuesday night, 6 p.m. It'll also be live streamed on the city's YouTube. Thanks for hearing all about that. All right, unless anybody has any other questions, we'll go back to our agenda. I think we're almost done here, folks. I lost it, so I'm gonna repeat this, I have a paper copy. Okay, so that's it. I do also want to mention that on that plan, comments are due April 14th, and there's a form on Engage Kingston if anybody wants to submit a comment. We'd love to hear from people what their feelings are about it. That brings us up to the last part of our meeting, which is announcements and communications. Does any organization want to mention events? If you're looking for, got open positions, you've got a project you want to let us know about. Eric, I'm looking at you first. I bet you've got stuff going on in your world. Do you want to mention?
We are working on our block party that has been happening the past couple of years. It did not happen last year because when we arrived, we were told about it, that it would normally happen in 2 weeks, and no one did any planning before we arrived. So we said it will not be happening this year, but we're looking for hopefully Memorial Day weekend, having that block party in our parking lot and on Cedar Street. And just having a time for people to come see the Salvation Army and get some good information. Of course, we have space available for our summer youth camp, which is located in Bloomingdale, New Jersey. And it's 2 weeks in July, 2 separate weeks. One is a themed adventure camp, so the kids get to do different adventure themed activities. And the following one is a sports week camp. So we have 10 spots for adventure, 11 spots for sports. It's a first come, first served basis. We've had one young man who went last year, already come to sign up again. That's for ages 6 to 12. And they can come sign up, and it is only $30 for the application fee, and it's $300 for us to send them. So I think 10% off the top is a pretty good fee for a full week away. And we're looking forward to signing as many kids up. The minimum is 21, but we can go over. So we're excited for that coming up, and we're hoping to have a nice volunteer dinner. We have a lot of folks who've been helping us for many years. One lady, we're celebrating 50 years in our building this year, and one lady has been there since she was 16 years old and volunteering. So this is her 50th year of volunteerism, and we'll be celebrating her. She doesn't know it yet on Mother's Day. And we look forward to that, as well as having our volunteer dinner. We get a lot of help from Devereaux Behavioral Health, Anderson Behavioral Health, and now we just added In-Flight Behavioral Health. And they're out of Red Hook as well, I believe. So they help us deliver our food. They pick up at Hannaford's for us. And then another group helps sort the food and then give it out to the folks every day at our soup kitchen. So we have folks of different abilities able to mix in with the community, and people have gotten to know the faces of the folks we have. And we're just really wanting to celebrate them and celebrate those who make the Salvation Army what it is.
It's a lot, thank you.
And of course, National Salvation Army Week is the starting the week after Mother's Day, enacted by Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1955. So a little history fact for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Susanna, anything in your world you want to announce?
Yeah, I don't remember. Gosh, I've talked about this here before, so I apologize. We are into, I'll just summarize, this sort of last blast with COVID vaccines. So as a community health center, we received money from HRSA, which is the federal agency that funds community health centers. as part of the Biden administration to encourage, I think, vaccines before the end of the public health emergency. And so we have partnered, there are a couple prongs of this project, but just for the Kingston region in Ulster County, we partnered with People's Place, Ulster Immigrant Defense Network, and the Ellenville Rural Health Network, and actually the town of New Paltz has called me also to do promotion of the COVID vaccine boosters and also the primary series for children. And we will be doing a lot of promotion in Midtown Kingston and at People's Place. And Troy Ellen, I did reach out on your suggestion to Catholic Charities. It took me a while to reach somebody, and I did talk to somebody, and then I think they're not interested actually. So, but thank you for that. I made some contact.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to let you know, so thanks. So there'll be some clinics, vaccine clinics. Woodstock Apothecary is going to be the vaccine administrator, and we're going to be giving some incentives for people, and yeah. So the public health emergency ends in mid-May, and I know being in Washington last weekend, there was some talk at high level HRSA people who have been, I mean, these people have been working really hard for the last few years. I was quite kind of overwhelmed by listening to just hearing how much people have done at the federal level to really try to help communities, especially the safety net communities. And they're really concerned with the end of the public health emergency. They what's going to happen to the most vulnerable populations in terms of access to testing, vaccines and treatment. So I think, federally qualified community health centers are going to continue to play a role, but can't really reach everyone. So I'm concerned about this too, honestly. So, because it's not, the people most at risk still are people with chronic conditions, and there are a lot of people with chronic conditions, the elderly and babies. There's still plenty of them in our hospitals. They're just not talked about in the media. So, yeah, and Pine Street is, I just went by there today. Boy, they're like lights on.
I know, that's exciting.
And there's a stairwell built. And so it's really, it's coming along, and still late spring, early summer, they say it's not going to be a hard hat area anymore by May. No more hard hat area by May. And then I think it's all the Department of Health approvals. So.
Yeah.
So there'll be lots to do, but the COVID stuff, I don't know if I can send you, like, we have so many beautiful, simple, not a lot of text for all different populations that we're, that these community partners are trying to reach, so I can send you something, yeah.
Thank you for that, Susan. Katrina, anything targets?
Let's see. So I mentioned the integrated Ulster orientation last time. We do have some slots left, so if folks are interested, that's still going on. It's on Eventbrite. We're also doing a lot, there's so much going on, I already know what to say, but we're doing a lot with children and families lately. So there's some really great stuff going on that might be of interest to this group. We have a parent who is partnering with us and doing this. She started in January, a Parents Helping Parents group at the pop-up cafe right next to the Center for Creative Education on Cedar Street.
Yeah.
And that's the last Friday of every month, I think from 6 to 7:30. And people can just go, it's for anybody that has a child that's got, a mental health issue, a neuro, divergent, anything. And it's a totally mutual support, peer-led. We're not there, no social, professionals are there. It's just a place where parents can talk to other parents, and we support that. We're also partnering with the Department of Probation, the Restorative Justice Center, to do like a discussion and like a training for parents of adolescents per their request, but that's open to the community. So if anybody wants to just spend time with other parents, and our department talking about what it's like raising a teen, we're going to be doing that April 13th, I think.
You get a lot of takers for that.
I bet, right? So that's gonna be really fun. That's about it for now, I think.
Yeah, that's fabulous. That's wonderful to hear about those programs. John, anything you want to announce or explain?
No, there's a lot of things I'm involved with that are accuracy related, and we've got the Ulster County Transportation Advisory Council participated in the Trail Advisory Council at the county level. And then the Lakefront, Kingston, and Fleet Streets, upcoming events, go to the public, not so much at the moment. But we're always looking for people to advocate with us.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, Dr. Lader, anything else that you haven't had a chance to share that you'd like to do at this time?
No, I think the CHIPTIC program is kind of like the big thing on our horizon. Otherwise, I guess the hospital's really busy. Cardiology department, we're doing those. We're treating heart attacks with angioplasties and stents, which we're now again. You may or may not be interested in this. Our cath program started about 1.5 years ago, and we've treated now in the cath lab over 600 patients with caths and treating heart attacks and things. It's amazing now that somebody who comes to the hospital with a heart attack can have a stent placed, adjusted meds, and be home in like 2 days, which is unheard of, and just a lot of progressing with a cardiac CT program. We have new equipment with the new building. Be doing cardiac MRI studies, which we're going to be on this side of the river, the only center between Albany and New York City who can do that. All kinds of neat stuff. So I think we're doing our share both in terms of prevention and taking care of people. So this is a exciting time for us. I don't know if anyone has any questions about any of the things that you hear going on. Clinical research that we're involved with, all kinds of neat things.
Thank you for that update. We appreciate hearing
No,
about it.
you're welcome. And, any specific questions, be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. So that just brings us to Troy. And Troy, anything in your world you want to announce?
No, nothing special. Thank you for asking.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And our next meeting is the 3rd week, and I don't have it in front of me, but it looks like it is April 19th. We'll meet here same time, same place. Hope to see you all then.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Right.